Okay, the new album. There are a number of new things on this album, new approaches to the album. Tell me what's new about it.
You tell him.
Basically, its newness derives from experiments that I guess we've conducted over the last couple of albums through Hemispheres and Farewell to Kings. We're experimenting with a lot of new instruments and sounds and rhythmic approaches and so on. And in a lot of cases, they were experimentation and took us off in varying directions. But this time, we found ways to put all those directions into a single stream, and consequently, I think the album probably has a more direct feel to it.
You went about the album differently this time too, though. You took some time off.
Yeah, we had time to write it and rehearse it and work on it prior to recording, which we usually don't. We usually go into the studio and we have some ideas and some songs prepared, but for the most part it's get it together, rehearse it, arrange it, and then record it straight away.
I was surprised that now, given the time to put an album together, you chose this time not to do a conceptual thing. I would have thought that you had when you had the time, that's the time to approach something really textured and complex and big. What was that? Was that a decision before you started?
That would have been logical for me to go about it, but no.
Too easy.
We chose not to do it that way. It was just a matter of, we have the time now because of so many years of working like crazy, on past things.
We decided with Hemispheres too that next album we'd like to do more of a Farewell to Kings type album with 6 or 7 separate things. And as it happened, that's the way the ideas came out too. Sometimes you can plan one thing, but if you have a certain type of ideas, then you're going to follow those rather than go by a preconceived pattern.
I think also because of the fact that Hemispheres took so long to do and took so much out of us, and it was really a draining album to do, that it was sort of enough. And we'd sort of taken that conceptual thing to its limit for the time being. And we all felt that we'd like to work on shorter pieces and something that wouldn't be that involved.
Right.
That's right.
You actually went into this thing with the concept for a conceptual piece, though, didn't you, that you dropped in the course?
It was a shorter idea, really. It was no more of a conceptual piece than Natural Science or Jacob's Ladder is, really.
It wasn't going to develop into
it. It would have been like a 10-minute track or so, 15 minutes.
It was more or less a question of the atmosphere of the tune and the flavor of the tune. Sugar Wayne was very Renaissance, very English, and the rest of the album seemed to have a more up-tempo, harder-edged feel, and it just didn't seem to fit.
Okay, there's some new technical effects on this album. You had a new interface machine. What does that do?
Well, what it does is, here's my big unit right here. What it does is it enables me to trigger my gigantic synthesizer with my feet. And they're very large feet, I might add. So I get very large sounds. And it enables me to keep playing things on my bass and to have a little more intricate string arrangements and that I will be able to reproduce live. So it extends the flexibility of the band. It's texturally.
Tell me a little bit about Natural Science off this album. How did that come together?
Under great strain. It was the one track that wasn't written or arranged before we went into the studio. So it was put together right there. We just sort of, once we had everything else finished, we started working on overdubs, and I went to work on some lyrics, and then we took pieces from the old Sir Gawain song and some other pieces that we hadn't used yet and cooked up some new ones that we needed for it. And over the course of about 5-6 days, I guess, we put it together.
That sounds like a strange way to write for a band that's sort of on the road all the time and together and all that kind of stuff, to actually have to cram a song in 3 or 4 days, to have to conceive it, put pieces together, do it like that. Is that the way you normally work?
Very often, yeah. It's a positive thing. A lot of times, having pressure on you, it makes you produce at a faster rate than you normally could.
The thing is, a few years ago, when we were supporting, we used to have a lot of hours in the day that were empty hours, and you could sit down at that time. We used to do a lot of writing on the road. But now that we're headlining all the time, and we do almost a 2-hour show every night, and the whole routine and rigmarole of actually doing the gig takes up so much of your time and energy that by the time you finish your show, even if you do have a couple hours before you're ready to crash, the last thing in the world you can do is pick up a song and try to be creative, It's like, dun-dun, dun-dun, dun-dun,
Listen to this.
That's terrible. So you end up writing a lot of garbage when you're really tired. So the best thing to do, as we proved this time around, is to take some time off, then start writing, even if it's a relatively short period of time. We found that we were able to get a lot more done in a shorter space of time that way.
Do you have suitcases full of cigarette packages with lyrics and notes and stuff in it?
Sort of.
Yeah, I just tend to write down a key phrase or a title very often. I'll have a title that I know I want to have a song for, so I'll just write that down, and then when there is time, I can remember a whole train of thought that made me think that was a good title, and conjuring all that up, I can usually put it together.
The whole music industry is going primitive, new wave, minimal rock and roll. Do you care?
It is. I don't think it is.
I don't think it is. What do you think?
It is.
I don't think it is.
We don't think that it is.
There's certainly some,
Cross that one
certainly
out.
some bands that have gone back to basics kind of thing, but those are the bands that can't do anything but play basics. But all the really interesting new wave bands seem to be developing and progressing into more interesting styles. I wouldn't say that Talking Heads, for instance, were one of the major new wave acts. I don't think they're minimalistic at all. They're quite subtly complex.
And the new Boomtown Rats album, too, the production of it and the music is very progressive, very complicated arrangements and all kinds of subtle effects in it and stuff. It's just the same thing we were doing a few years ago, you know, it's just a different period.
Yeah, it's definitely a positive thing, though, I feel. It's really giving, adding a spark to what was becoming a complacent industry.
Your music seemed to have turned right over when Neil joined the band.
Turned over and died.
You've been asked that one before, haven't you? All your lyrics are sort of mystic and that kind of thing. What's on your reading list?
Oh, I try to cover a lot of different things with reading. I read a little bit of science fiction, a little bit of fantasy, and
Yeah.
a lot of English literature, Beano, Bunter.
Incredible.
A lot of stuff, some serious and some not serious. Just keep the head active.
And Alex and I can't read.
Well, you can't read, and you never seem to write. How come you guys don't contribute more songs lyrically?
Well, you know,
We don't talk so good.
like,
Talk for yourself.
I usually pull a tune out every couple of albums, but that's about it. This guy does it, and you're welcome to it. Alex and I prefer to spend more time on music. That's what moves us.
So it comes down to a lot of times when we're working on writing, we'll split up, and the two of them will go together and work on music while I work on lyrics. It's just a matter of facility, really. I have a facility with words that I don't have with notes, and they have it with notes. It's a good balance.
So you guys sort of been living in each other's pockets for